My name's Antony, and I work at Audible. Audible is an online audiobook and podcast service. It's part of Amazon, and my job title is Senior Director and EU Head of Legal, which is a very grand title. It basically means I'm part of the European leadership team for Audible, and I also lead a team of 6 lawyers, 3 in London and 3 in Berlin. And we provide legal advice and support to Audible's teams across the UK and Europe. I've only been at Audible myself about a year. I joined during the COVID pandemic, which has been a really interesting time to change jobs. But over the past 20 years, really long time, I've had 3 quite different careers and about 9 or 10 employers. And I'm here today to tell you a little bit about my career journey and about the work I do today. And I want to make sure I leave plenty of time for questions you may have about my journey, about the process of establishing a career or changing a career, and then specifically about Audible and Amazon. Now, when I was your age, which unfortunately was a really long time ago for me, I was studying geography, history, and design and technology, which is kind of an odd combination of subjects. I did not have a plan. I basically just picked my favorite subjects and ran with them. And I carried that on into university. Again, I didn't really have a plan. I studied geography because I'd enjoyed it most at school. But during the course of my geography degree, I kind of became aware of this place called the City of London and the world of finance, which I hadn't had any exposure to. But it sounded really interesting. I didn't really know how to find out more. So what I did was I continued my studies and I did a master's in finance to try and find out more. The more I found out, the more I thought, this is really interesting, City of London, finance, it sounds fascinating, it sounds challenging. So I ended up working at a small investment bank in the City of London. I really liked the city, I liked the energy, I liked working with kind of bright, intelligent people. But what I didn't enjoy was the work I was doing, which was really unfortunate because it felt like I put a lot of effort into getting there and then I hadn't really enjoyed it. And honestly, I wasn't very good at it. And after about 3 years, I got made redundant as part of a restructuring. And I sort of was sitting there after 3 years thinking, where do I go now? I knew what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to just jump straight back into banking, but I didn't know where to go. But at the same time, I needed to pay my way. I needed to pay the bills. And so what I ended up doing was taking a complete kind of left field decision and going off to Japan to teach English as a second language. And I was sent to a really remote island. Japan is far enough away, but this was far, far away Japan, a remote island called Hachijojima, which is about 200 miles south of Tokyo in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. An island of just 7,500 people, mostly fishermen and farmers and their families. It was a very daunting experience, but it was a very rewarding experience in its own right. And more importantly, I guess for the long term, for me, it gave me a chance to take a slight step back and think, what do I want to be doing for the rest of my working life? I knew I liked the City of London. And I liked its energy. And as I said, I really enjoyed working with other smart people who would push me, challenge me, test me, kind of make me try and be the best version of my working self I could be. But I just didn't like the culture of banking. It suits some people, it just wasn't for me. But while I'd been working in banking, I had spent some time working with lawyers. They seemed bright, they seemed like nice people. The work they were doing seemed interesting. And they were doing all that without the kind of aggressive sales mentality that I'd found in banking and found personally so challenging. And I thought, the more I thought about it, the more I thought, yes, law, this could be the thing for me. So after spending a year in Japan and learning Japanese with a really bad kind of village accent, I returned to London and I retrained as a lawyer. That involved a year conversion course, and then a year sort of practical legal skills course. I found it really hard to go back to studying after about 4.5 years out. I was a lot older. Well, I felt like I was a lot older. It was only about 4 or 5 years, but I felt a lot older than my peers at the time. But I did enjoy what I was learning, and I was fortunate enough to get a sort of trainee position at a law firm called Allen and Overy in their London office. When I started, I was actually older than my supervisor, which seemed to freak him out more than it did me. I spent 3 years there, and then after 3 years, I got itchy feet and I moved to another law firm working in London, but this law firm was based in New York, and I had the opportunity to travel with them and spend some time in New York and also elsewhere. Again, I stayed for around 3 years, and my itchy feet came back after those 3 years, and I moved to Amazon. I had got to the point where I thought, I really do enjoy being a lawyer, but I find it a bit frustrating that working for a law firm, I kind of got parachuted into a company to help with a specific problem, and then as soon as that problem was resolved, off I'd go to a different company to do something else. It felt very disjointed, and I didn't really feel part of a really solid team. I wanted to get to know a business really well and to advise from within that business. So that's how I ended up with Amazon. At the time, Amazon was based in a really grotty office block in Slough. I remember doing my commute out of London, kind of the opposite direction to everyone else who was coming into London. It was not a glamorous place to work at the time, but the work was really fascinating. Amazon was big. This was back in 2012, but it was nowhere as big as it is today. So things like Prime Video didn't exist, Prime Music didn't exist, Twitch didn't exist. A lot of the things we see today just weren't there. All that was being built. I spent a really enjoyable 3 years there, but again, after 3 years, my itchy feet came back, and I decided I wanted to try something different. I wanted to try a real sort of startup, a really small company at the early stage of its development, and I also wanted to push myself into some new areas outside of law. So then I joined the London office of a Los Angeles-based fashion business called Textile. I joined in a hybrid role. I was the sort of European legal director, but also in charge of the London office, which meant that I kind of combined what I was doing in the law with things I'd never done before, like marketing and operations and HR. The legal side of things I found I was very comfortable in. The business side of things, really rewarding, really challenging, but ultimately I realized I like the idea of it, but I actually enjoy being a lawyer more. This time I stuck it out for 5 years, but after 5 years I decided I wanted to go back to being a lawyer. It's what I found I enjoyed most. And so I returned to Amazon, specifically to Audible, which I mentioned is owned by Amazon. And that's where I am now in my current role. Audible has been part of Amazon for 13 years, since it was acquired in 2008. Audible shares a lot of the systems, tools, processes, buildings as Amazon, but it still feels very independent. Audible's founder, a guy called Don Katz, is still leading the business. Our headquarters is still in New Jersey rather than in Seattle like the rest of Amazon. We've still got our own distinct culture, and we're very embedded in the local communities in which our teams and offices are based. And that for me was really the attraction for Audible. You kind of get all the benefits of being part of Amazon with the scale and the resources that brings, but we're a little bit distinct, a little bit independent and separate with our own identity. So what does my day-to-day look like? The most exciting thing is it looks very varied. It can differ a lot from day to day, from week to week. As I mentioned, I lead a team of 6 lawyers, and our responsibility, our job, is to identify, analyze, and manage legal risks that our business colleagues and clients face. For example, when we're preparing a contract with an author or a narrator to develop and distribute an audiobook or a podcast via the Audible web or website or app, we need to make sure that the contracts we're negotiating give us all the rights we need to do what we want to do with it. And that means not just the rights we need today, but the rights we think we might need in the future. So recently, maybe a year or two ago, we started distributing books via Alexa enabled devices. We've launched in new countries. In the last couple of years, we've launched in Italy and Spain. We need to think ahead when we're preparing our contracts to make sure that we have the ability to do these exciting new things in the future, or to ensure that we have a mechanism in the contract for us to add these things on over time. We also need to try and predict what happens if something goes wrong. What happens if a narrator falls ill halfway through preparing a recording for us? What do we do there? What happens if it turns out, unfortunately, that an author we're working with has kind of stolen their idea from someone else? What is our responsibility and risk in that situation, and how do we manage it? In another area, talking again about identifying, analysing and managing risk, we do a lot of marketing. We work very closely with our marketing team to ensure that their ads that they're producing for our website, for our app, for our TV spots, for our radio broadcasts, for our out-of-home advertising on billboards, that they comply with all the relevant laws and codes of practice. Marketing colleagues are super inventive. They do a fantastic job. Their job is to sell our service. And if they don't do their job, we don't frankly have jobs. But sometimes we have to just pull them back a little bit and say, well, you've got to be really clear what you're offering here. And we've got to be inventive as lawyers, not just to say no. We've got to say, no, but here's an alternative that would work or might work, and be collaborative and helpful in that respect. In terms of things I'm working on right now, there are a couple of really exciting projects I'd love to be able to tell you about, but we haven't announced them publicly yet. But watch this space if you're interested in Audible and audiobooks, because there's an awful lot happening. You may have seen in the press that some of our competitors have been merging and acquiring each other. So Spotify bought an audiobook company called Findaway. A lot is happening in the text-to-speech or TTS space, where instead of having a human narrator, you instead have very, very clever algorithms and AI which will generate computer audio from a text. So you'd literally plug the text of a book or a podcast into an algorithmic engine, and it will convert that into really intelligent speech that sometimes can be quite hard to tell the difference about. There's a lot of interesting things happening there. A couple of other projects we are working on that I am able to say a bit more about is we're opening a company in France to help us operate a studio in Paris that will enable us to record audiobooks and podcasts with really top French talent for our French language service. As a legal team, we're involved working closely with our colleagues in HR to make sure all the employee contracts are in place and employees are transferred properly, with our operations team to make sure we've got the right lease and permits for the building and for the fit out of that building. Another project, which is kind of typical of the projects we work on to respond to changes in the laws in the country we work in. In Germany, from July of next year, there will be a new law requiring all companies that offer subscriptions, memberships via the internet. So that's people like Prime, Netflix, Spotify, and Audible. That law will require all those companies to make it possible to cancel your membership with no more than 2 clicks from any page on the web or app. I don't know if you've ever tried to cancel an online subscription, but usually it takes a lot of steps. You have to find your account, log into your account, go to the cancellation page, confirm you want to cancel, reconfirm you want to cancel, reconfirm you absolutely do definitely want to cancel. In Germany, that's not going to be possible or permissible from July next year. So as a lawyer, myself and my team, we're working very closely with our product and tech teams to understand how we can implement this as a technical matter, and with our customer experience team to try and identify how that's going to look, how that experience is going to look for customers. So those are just a few real world examples of what my day-to-day work can look like. I've mentioned working with other teams. I mentioned HR, ops, product and customer experience. It takes a lot of people with a lot of different skills and experiences to provide the Audible service. It's not just lawyers, you'll be pleased to hear. We have a very large content team, and those are a combination of people who go out to do deals, to negotiate licenses and rights for us to acquire audiobooks and podcasts to distribute on our service. Within the content team, we also have producers and production teams who turn those concepts, those licenses into finished products that we can offer to our customers on our site. We have a big marketing team whose responsibility is to communicate the Audible service to customers and to message not only the membership, but also particular titles that customers might like to discover and listen to. The marketing team work closely with a communications team who work not so much with end customers, but with other businesses, with journalists, with the press, to again message the Audible service and develop partnerships and other opportunities for us. We have a large tech and also product team who develop and maintain the platform that the service, the Audible service, runs on, and builds features on it that are really useful for customers. For example, a feature that enables customers to switch seamlessly between devices without losing their place in an audiobook. We also have a big and growing analytics team who take the data that we have about the usage of our service to try and identify what is it that customers like about our service? What is it they don't like? What are they listening to? What genres they're particularly interested in? Is it true crime? Is it romance? And all that data helps us to understand where we should be investing the money we have to deliver products and services that our customers really want. We have a customer service team who help our customers resolve issues, complications, problems they have. We have HR teams, finance teams, and of course the legal team as well. Right now at Audible in the UK, we do have a number of openings available. They're all unfortunately at the kind of more experienced end of the spectrum. In the US, Audible runs a really successful internship program. We don't yet have an internship program of our own in the UK, but we're working on it. And we hope to have something up maybe in the next year or so. And as soon as we do, we'll obviously definitely be in touch with Poonam and her colleagues to let them know. In the meantime, though, Amazon is doubling down on its apprenticeship program, which has been really, really successful. Amazon Apprenticeships has its kind of biggest launch around National Apprenticeship Week at the start of February. So if you're interested in opportunities at wider Amazon, do keep an eye out, as I say, for Amazon Apprenticeships. Now, I promised to leave plenty of time for questions, and I absolutely want to do that. But just before I stop, I wanted to try and pull together a few of the strands of my own career journey and think about what advice might I have given to my 16, 17-year-old self if I had the opportunity. And I think my advice would be, don't panic. Don't worry if you don't know exactly what you want to do at this stage of your life. And don't worry if your career doesn't map out immediately the way you hope it would. If you have a passion and a clear vision for what you'd like your career to be, that is fantastic. If you're lucky enough to be in that position, it's incredibly powerful, and go for it. But if you don't know exactly what you want to do, if you're like me, try not to panic. Your working life is long, really long, depressingly long. For most of us, it'll be 40, 45, 50 years probably. And that is plenty of time to try a career, to try again if it doesn't work, to try again, or to try something different. Take the time to work out what works for you. If you take a change of direction, it may feel like you're taking a step back. It may feel like you're falling behind your peers who are maybe charging ahead on a particular career path. But do try to remember you are playing the long game, 40, 50 years, not 4 or 5 years. And if you do take a wrong turning like I did, that experience is itself valuable. You're never going to be completely wasting your time. You're always learning something, a new skill, a new insight, even if you're just clarifying in your own head what it is you do want to do or what it is you don't want to do. Those are all helpful life lessons along the journey of a career, of a working life, which is going to be long for almost all of us.